Hey guys, tonight we're heading back almost 2,000 years to a place that most Romans hoped they would never be stationed. A lonely fort at the edge of the empire, far from Rome, far from comfort, far from anything that resembled a decent restaurant. So before we begin tonight's slow journey into life inside a Roman fort after sunset, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy these quiet walks through the stranger corners of history. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from. There's something strangely comforting about knowing people all over the world are settling in together. Some are getting ready for sleep, some are pretending to work, and some are probably listening while wrapped in a blanket, learning how Roman soldiers spent their evenings arguing about boots and soup. Now dim the lights, get comfortable, maybe turn on a fan for that gentle background hum, and let's drift back into the ancient world together. The sun is sinking behind the hills. The shadows stretch across the countryside. A cool breeze moves through the grass, and somewhere on the frontier of the Roman Empire, a soldier is already counting the minutes until his shift ends. Life inside a Roman fort after sunset was not particularly glamorous. Movies often imagine soldiers standing heroically while dramatic music plays. In reality, many evenings involved paperwork, maintenance, complaints, and the ongoing struggle to avoid whatever stew was being served that night. Still, sunset marked an important moment. The day was ending. The gates would soon close, and the fort would settle into its nightly rhythm. Imagine approaching a Roman fort from a distance. The walls rise above the landscape. Watchtowers stand at the corners. Smoke drifts from cooking fires. Voices echo through the evening air. This is not merely a military base. It is a small town, a community, a machine designed to keep the empire running. Inside live hundreds, sometimes thousands, of soldiers. There are officers, clerks, blacksmiths, stable workers, cooks, doctors, and servants. There may even be merchants lingering outside the walls, hoping to sell wine, bread, or objects that soldiers did not need, but purchased anyway. Human nature has remained surprisingly consistent. As daylight fades, the guards prepare to secure the entrance. The massive wooden gates swing inward. Chains rattle. Commands are shouted. Everything becomes slightly quieter, not silent. Roman forts were never truly silent, but quieter. The outside world begins to feel farther away. Now the soldiers are mostly inside for the night. Some have just returned from patrol. Others are finishing duties. Many are thinking about food. Ancient people spent an extraordinary amount of time thinking about food. This was partly because food required effort. You could not simply order delivery. No exhausted legionary could request someone bring him dinner. Instead, food had to be grown, stored, and cooked. The entire empire was basically one enormous logistical challenge. Fortunately, the Romans were very good at logistics. If there had been Olympic events for moving grain from one side of Europe to another, Rome would have won gold every single year. Inside the fort, evening meals are beginning. The smell of cooking spreads through the barracks. Bread is everywhere. Roman soldiers consumed remarkable amounts of grain. Bread formed the foundation of military life. Without bread, armies became unhappy. Alongside bread might be vegetables, cheese, salted meat, or stew. The quality depended heavily on location. A soldier stationed near prosperous regions might eat reasonably well. A soldier on some rainy northern frontier might spend years wondering about his life. Imagine serving in Britain. The weather is cold. The landscape is damp. Everything smells slightly wet. You joined the greatest empire on earth, and somehow you still spend half your day standing in mud. Rome promised glory. Britain delivered puddles. After dinner, some men remain outdoors. The last traces of daylight still cling to the horizon. Small groups gather. Conversations drift through the fort. News travels slowly in the ancient world. Rumors travel incredibly fast. A soldier might hear stories about political events hundreds of miles away. Most details are wrong. Some are wildly wrong. But that never stops anyone. Humans have always enjoyed speculation. Ancient gossip functioned much like modern social media. The technology changed. The behavior remained familiar. Nearby, horses settle into their stables. The cavalrymen check equipment. Leather straps are inspected. Saddles adjusted. Animals fed. Across the fort, blacksmiths finish their final tasks. Tools are organized. Forges cool. Metalwork never truly ends. As darkness deepens, lamps begin appearing. Oil lamps flicker inside buildings. Their light is soft and uneven. Walls glow amber. Inside the barracks, soldiers prepare sleeping spaces. Roman barracks were practical. Several soldiers shared rooms. Privacy existed as a theoretical concept. The rooms contained simple furnishings: beds, storage chests, personal belongings, letters from home, small religious objects, because beneath the armor and discipline were ordinary people. Some missed their families, some dreamed of promotion, some counted the years until retirement. One fascinating thing about Roman forts is how much writing occurred. They documented everything: orders, supplies, personnel, payments. Somewhere inside the fort, tonight, clerks continue working by lamplight. Wax tablets sit before them. Pens scratch across surfaces. History often celebrates emperors. But empires are really powered by exhausted office workers. That was true then. It remains true now. Eventually, the sky becomes fully dark. Stars emerge overhead. For soldiers stationed far from cities, the night sky can be astonishing. Thousands of stars fill the darkness. The Milky Way stretches above the fort, a vast river of light. Beautiful, silent, yet even as many soldiers prepare for sleep, others are only beginning work. Because somebody must guard the fort. Night watch duty arrives. The darkness changes everything. Shapes become uncertain. Sounds travel differently. Every distant movement attracts attention. Most nights, nothing happens. But military organizations prepare for the nights when something does. A sleepy guard can become a dangerous liability. As the fort settles deeper into darkness, the rhythm slows. Conversations fade. Lamps are extinguished one by one. Boots stop clattering. There is always a horse shifting in a stable, a guard clearing his throat. The soft sounds of hundreds of people sharing one enclosed space. And somewhere beneath the stars, a Roman soldier pulls his cloak tighter against the cold. He looks beyond the walls, beyond the frontier, then he sighs, because his shift still has 3 more hours left. And tomorrow, unfortunately for him, is another Roman day. For the men assigned to night watch, however, tomorrow still feels very far away. The fort may be settling down, the barracks may be growing quieter, but the guards remain awake. And staying awake can be surprisingly difficult when absolutely nothing is happening. Modern people often imagine danger around every corner of the ancient world. In reality, many soldiers spent stretches experiencing the military equivalent of watching paint dry. Hour after hour, step after step, wall after wall. The frontier was often less about heroic battles and more about persistent boredom. A guard slowly walks along the ramparts. His sandals scrape against the wooden walkway. His spear rests against his shoulder. A cool wind pushes across the dark countryside. Beyond the walls, the landscape disappears into shadows. Somewhere out there are forests, fields, villages, rivers, and perhaps people who would rather not have Roman soldiers living nearby. The empire had a habit of expanding into places with different opinions about conquest. Still, tonight appears peaceful. The guard pauses, listens, hears nothing except insects and distant animals, then continues walking. This process repeats itself countless times. Military service contained a great deal of repetition. The same routes, the same inspections, the same duties, the same complaints. If ancient soldiers had possessed internet forums, 90% of the posts would probably have been people discussing how tired they were. Back inside the fort, a different group of soldiers remains awake for entirely voluntary reasons. These men are gambling. Of course they are. Humans have been finding creative ways to lose money for thousands of years. Roman soldiers were particularly enthusiastic participants. Dice games were popular throughout the empire. Archaeologists have uncovered gaming pieces at military sites across Roman territory. Legionaries are currently convincing themselves that luck is finally about to change. It never changes, but hope remains stubborn. A small oil lamp flickers on a table. Several soldiers lean forward. Dice tumble across the surface. Coins exchange hands. Someone celebrates. Someone groans. Someone accuses another player of cheating. That accusation may even be correct. Fortunately, most disputes end with grumbling rather than violence. Nobody wants to explain to a centurion why they received a black eye during an argument. Not far away, another soldier is writing a letter. This is one of the quieter moments. The Roman army connected people across enormous distances. A recruit from Spain might serve in Britain. The empire was vast. Its roads stretched for thousands of miles. Letters served as fragile little bridges. Perhaps he is writing to parents, a brother, or a wife waiting far away. Many surviving Roman letters look ordinary. They contain updates, greetings, and complaints. One soldier might ask for clothing. Someone else may remind relatives that receiving no letters for 6 months is deeply frustrating. The concerns feel strangely familiar. Across 2,000 years, people remain people. The details change. The emotions do not. A homesick soldier in Britain would understand a homesick worker today. Eventually, the writer finishes. The letter will travel through a complicated network of roads and couriers. Assuming nobody loses it, which occasionally happened elsewhere in the fort, some soldiers are already asleep or attempting to sleep. The distinction matters. Sleeping inside a crowded barracks could be challenging. Someone snores. Someone talks in his sleep. Someone returns late and accidentally kicks a storage chest. Peaceful sleeping conditions were never guaranteed. Imagine 20 years of this. Suddenly, retirement starts sounding very attractive. Veterans often received rewards after service like land grants, money, and citizenship. The empire needed experienced soldiers. Experienced soldiers needed reasons to remain loyal. Occasionally, emperors forgot to pay people properly, producing predictable consequences. As midnight approaches, temperatures begin falling. The warmth of the day disappears. Cloaks become more important. Fires become more applicable. One guard glances upward. The stars remain bright. Roman soldiers often relied upon the night sky for navigation and timekeeping. The heavens also inspired religious reflection. The Roman world was deeply spiritual. Religion surrounded daily life. Gods appeared everywhere, in homes, temples, at crossroads, and inside forts. A soldier might quietly offer a prayer before bed. Another might leave a small offering. Promotion was always popular. Career-related requests were likely common. Near the center of the fort stands the headquarters building. Even now, it possesses an air of authority. Important records are stored here. Every fort revolves around this structure. The building is sleeping now, yet tomorrow it will awaken. Messengers will arrive. Reports will be filed. Let's drift to the hospital. Roman military medicine was surprisingly advanced. Not perfect, but capable. The army understood that healthy soldiers are useful. Rome invested effort into keeping troops alive. The result was a sophisticated medical system. Tonight, the hospital remains peaceful. No emergencies, just rest. As hours crawl onward, boredom becomes the greatest enemy. The mind wanders. A guard thinks about home. Another imagines retirement. History portrays ancient people as fundamentally different, but they worried about the same things: money, family, work, health, relationships. Meanwhile, somewhere in the fort, an officer cannot sleep. Perhaps he is reviewing reports or worrying about supply shortages. Military bureaucracy creates stress. Outside, the night reaches its deepest point. This is the quietest time. The fort feels suspended between yesterday and tomorrow. Most people sleep. One unfortunate guard is fighting a losing battle against exhaustion. His eyelids feel heavy. The stars blur slightly. He walks faster to stay awake. Roman discipline could be ruthless. The army functioned because soldiers followed rules. Discipline held everything together, and so the guard remains awake. Eventually, very slowly, the darkness begins to change. The eastern horizon softens. Morning is still distant, but it is coming. The soldiers on watch notice first. Another night has nearly passed. Another shift is almost complete. The routine is about to begin all over again. The guards notice it first, as they always do. That subtle change in the darkness. Not light yet, not even close, but something softer in the sky, like the night is finally starting to loosen its grip. For the men still walk in the walls. Time moves differently here. Night shifts don't feel like hours. They feel like long, stretched out pieces of silence, broken only by footsteps and breath. Still, even the most exhausting watch eventually reaches its quiet turning point, the part where the world starts to shift again. Inside the fort, most of the barracks are still asleep, a tangled mixture of cloaks, blankets, boots left near beds, and half-finished dreams that don't quite belong to anyone anymore. But sleep in a Roman fort is never truly deep for long, because dawn always arrives with purpose, and purpose is rarely quiet. Outside, the air begins to cool in a different way. Not colder exactly, just clearer, the kind of air that signals movement is coming back into the world. A guard on the eastern wall pauses. He leans slightly forward, watching the horizon without really expecting anything. And yet the sky keeps changing anyway, slowly, patiently, as if it has all the time in the world. Unlike the people beneath it, somewhere below, in the corridors of the fort, a distant door creaks open. A late sleeper shifts. A boot falls over. A quiet curse follows. The first small sounds of morning begin to appear. Not loud, not organized, just life returning in fragments. Roman forts did not wake up all at once. They transitioned, like a machine slowly restarting after a long pause, one section at a time. A cook is the first to truly begin working. Fires are coaxed back into life. Ash is stirred. Wood is added. Flame returns reluctantly at first, then more confidently. Breakfast in a Roman fort is not a grand affair. There are no long ceremonial meals, no leisurely dining, just something warm enough to prepare the body for another day of marching, training, or paperwork. Bread again, almost always bread, sometimes porridge, sometimes leftovers from the night before that nobody wants to talk about too loudly. The soldiers begin to rise slowly, not in a dramatic way, more like a collective agreement that sleep has officially been canceled. A man sits up in his bed and stares at the wall for a few seconds before remembering where he is. Another reaches for his sandals without opening his eyes properly. Someone mutters something about duty that sounds like a complaint, even if no one is listening. Outside, the sky grows lighter. The stars fade one by one, like they were never meant to stay long anyway. And then, the fort's rhythm shifts again. New guards arrive to replace the night watch. They exchange quiet words with those finishing their shift. Nothing dramatic, just the simple transfer of responsibility. One group relieved, another beginning. That cycle, repeated endlessly, is what keeps the frontier stable. Not heroics, not glory, just rotation. Inside the headquarters building, officers begin to appear. Sleep has done its best, but it never fully wins against military responsibility. Reports from the night are collected. Nothing unusual, as usual, which is often the best possible outcome. A calm night is a successful night. Somewhere nearby, a clerk prepares wax tablets again. The same motion as before. Different day, same process, numbers, names, supplies. The empire keeps its memory in small written fragments. Without them, it would forget itself. Outside the fort walls, the land begins to reappear. Fields become visible again. Trees regain shape. The world stops being just shadow and becomes something definable. A distant bird calls, then another. Nature, it turns out, does not care much for Roman schedules either. At the edge of the fort, merchants begin to gather. They always arrive early, almost instinctively. Where there are soldiers, there is trade. Where there is trade, there is opportunity. Small carts, bundles of goods, the quiet promise of coins, changing hands before the official day has even started. Some soldiers, already awake, drift toward them, still half asleep, still thinking about food, always thinking about food. A young recruit watches all of this with the expression of someone slowly realizing that military life is less dramatic than expected. There is no grand awakening, no cinematic moment, just chores arriving in daylight, weapons checked, shields inspected, sandals tightened. orders delivered, training prepared, and somewhere in the middle of all this routine, life continues without asking for permission. In the stable area, animals are already active. Horses shake off the night. Handlers check their condition. Straps are adjusted again, because they always are. A broken strap in the morning becomes a problem by midday, and the Roman army has learned over centuries to respect small problems before they become large ones. Near the center of the fort, the smell of breakfast spreads further. It mixes with smoke, dust, and leather, a scent that belongs entirely to military life. Not pleasant, not unpleasant, just familiar. Soldiers gather in small groups. Some eat quietly, some talk, some stare into the distance, while slowly becoming fully awake. The night feels far away already, even though it ended only moments ago. That is how routine works here. It compresses time, turns long hours into something that feels almost ordinary. A night of tension becomes just another shift. A morning of exhaustion becomes just another start. And somewhere beneath it all, the fort continues its existence. Because for Rome's frontier soldiers, this is life. Not the battles, not the legends, not the stories that will eventually be told far away in Rome. But this, the quiet transition from night to day, the same gates opening again, the same duties returning, the same horizon watching back at them without ever changing its expression. And as the sun finally begins to rise above the edge of the world, the Roman fort stands ready again. Another day has begun. The first true sunlight does not arrive with drama. It simply appears, quietly at first, then steadily, as if it has done this job countless times and sees no reason to change its approach now. Shadows inside the fort begin to shrink, not disappear, just retreat, slowly giving space back to the world. For the soldiers, this is the part of the day where exhaustion and routine blend together into something almost automatic. Nobody feels fully awake yet, but nobody is fully asleep either. It is a strange in-between state where action happens before thought catches up. The gates of the fort are opened wider. Chains are lifted. Wooden beams shift with familiar weight. The frontier is visible again, stretching out beyond the walls like it never left. A few early traders stand waiting, already negotiating with soldiers who have not even finished their first real sentence of the morning. Some deals are made quickly, others fail just as quickly. Both outcomes are normal. Inside the fort, drills begin. Not always intense, not always exciting, just repetition designed to make bodies remember what minds sometimes forget. Formation practice, weapon handling, movement drills along familiar paths. A soldier learns over time that the body becomes a kind of memory storage. It remembers what exhaustion tries to erase. Near the training grounds, an officer watches without saying much. Most instructions do not need words anymore. The system is already built. It just needs to be maintained. A group of recruits moves through a drill, slightly out of sync. One is too slow. Another is too fast. Someone in the back tries to correct himself mid-step and only makes it worse. No one is punished dramatically, just corrected, then corrected again and again. Because in the Roman army, perfection is less important than repetition that eventually leads to improvement. Nearby, the morning supply routine begins to take shape. Crates are checked. Records are compared. Quantities are verified. Someone notices a shortage and immediately begins explaining why it is not actually a shortage, just a misunderstanding of counting methods. This explanation is not entirely convincing, but it is written down anyway. That is how bureaucracy survives, not through certainty, but through documentation of uncertainty. In another corner of the fort, the hospital continues its quiet work. A patient is helped to sit up. Another is checked by a medic who has likely done this exact motion hundreds of times. Nothing rushed, nothing dramatic, just care delivered in a structured way. Outside, the air warms slightly. The day is now fully in motion. The strange stillness of dawn is gone, replaced by activity that feels inevitable. Even the animals seem more alert now. Horses shift in their stalls. Dogs move between buildings. Everything inside the fort has a place and a pattern, and everything tends to return to it. At the center of it all, the headquarters building begins to fill. Officers arrive in a slow stream, some still half asleep, some already irritated by things that have not happened yet. Scrolls and tablets are placed on tables. Reports are reviewed. Decisions are made that will affect soldiers who are currently just trying to finish breakfast. Far away from this, none of it feels important yet. But inside the fort, it is the structure of the entire day. A soldier walking past pauses briefly at the edge of a corridor. He watches a clerk writing rapidly. Names, numbers, small marks that will outlive the moment they are written. Then he continues walking, because there is always somewhere else to be. That is one of the quiet truths of life here. Movement never really stops. It only changes direction. As midday approaches slowly in the distance, the fort becomes fully itself again. Loud in places, quiet in others, structured everywhere. And above it all, the same sky continues its slow arc, unbothered, unchanged, watching another Roman day unfold exactly as expected, until, eventually, it will tilt again toward evening, and the entire cycle will begin once more. And then, just like every other day, it starts to fade. Not the fort, not the routine, just the feeling that anything here is new. Because by now, everything has already happened before. The gates opened, the drills began, the reports were written, the arguments were repeated, the bread was eaten, the complaints were made, and the empire kept moving without ever pausing to announce it. There is a strange comfort in that, even if nobody says it out loud. A Roman frontier fort is not built for excitement. It is built for continuation, for repeating the same day until it stops mattering which day it actually is. Somewhere inside the fort, a soldier leans against a wall for a moment longer than he should, not because he is lazy, but because he is simply tired in a way that sleep does not fully fix. Another passes by and says nothing, because nothing needs to be said. The system already understands. Across the training grounds, equipment is being put away, not carefully, not carelessly, just in the way that suggests it will all be taken out again tomorrow anyway. Because it will. It always will. Inside the headquarters, the final reports of the day are filed. Wax tablets are closed. Scrolls are stacked. Names are recorded one more time before being forgotten until they are needed again. Outside, the sky begins its slow change once more. The same cycle preparing to repeat. Somewhere, a gate is checked. Somewhere else, a fire is adjusted. Somewhere else again, a soldier quietly hopes that tomorrow will feel slightly shorter than today. It probably won't, but hope is not required to be logical, only persistent. As evening approaches, the fort does not transform. It settles, like it already knows what comes next. The guards will change. The meals will return. The conversations will restart. The night will stretch out again. And the same quiet rhythm will continue without asking for permission from anyone living inside it, because that is what life here is. Not the battles written in history books, not the triumphs carved into stone, but the repetition no one remembers, the waiting, the walking, the watching, the writing, the eating, the sleeping, and the waking up to do it all again. And maybe that is the most honest version of Rome that exists. Not the empire of conquest, but the empire of routine, of thousands of places like this, far from the capital, far from attention, keeping everything going simply because someone has to. So as the light finally begins to fade again over the fort, nothing dramatic happens. No final moment. No grand conclusion. Just another evening arriving exactly when it is supposed to, and another group of soldiers preparing, once again, for a night that will feel just like the one before it. Somewhere beyond the walls, the world keeps moving. Inside them, it simply continues. And in that quiet repetition, the story ends the only way it ever really could. Not with a stop, but with a cycle that refuses to break. Good night.